Good afternoon, everybody. Pigskin Pete here. Happy Thursday to everybody. I'm going to make a video today. I wasn't planning on making this video probably till closer, or a video like this, probably closer till the start of the next football season, the college football season. The season's only been over for a few weeks now. And I'm already seeing, now if you have been paying attention to my videos, if you've been a subscriber for the previous football season, you saw me do several videos about the Gamecocks. It's one of my favorite pastimes. Before I even ever made YouTube videos, since I live in the state of South Carolina and I'm a lifelong Clemson fan, I have a lot of interaction with Carolina fans, and they've been delusional for a long time. Now, it's one thing to have your trash talking sessions, Clemson versus South Carolina, trash talking. That's all fine, but the delusion that these fans have is so astronomical that it's really hard for me to believe. Arguing with a Gamecock fan is like arguing with like a tree. It has about as much substance as a tree would have in an argument. But what these guys, this is something that they do every single year in my life. It's one thing to be optimistic about your football program. I don't blame any fan base for being optimistic about the upcoming season. As a matter of fact, if you're not optimistic about your upcoming season, you're probably not a real fan. So I'll give you that. There's a difference between optimism and delusion when it comes to the Gamecocks. Some of these people actually believe that they're going to win 11 games next year, 10 or 11 games, win the East, and compete for an SEC title. Now, if you're competing for an SEC title in football, you're basically competing for a playoff spot. Because the winner of the SEC, there's a 99% chance that team is going to make the playoff. So let's go back. And you may hear me, you may have heard me make these points before over the course of my videos. So, I'm going to have to repeat myself. I'm sorry. But let's just be real here. Will Muschamp took over a bad team. Steve Spurrier deserted them in his final year there, which was, I could make a whole nother video on that. What a classless move that was. But anyway, Will Muschamp comes in there, takes a 3-win team to a 6-win team, which is better, but still pretty bad, right? Then last year, they win 9 games. They won 8 games and beat Michigan in the bowl to get to 9 wins. Now, in the meantime, if you just look at that number 9, that 9-win number, you get all excited if you're a Gamecock fan. But let's look at the season. So I don't have this all written down. This is just basically off of memory. Your best win was against North Carolina State, the first game of the season. That was your best win all season long, period. I guess you could make an argument for the Michigan bowl win being a good one. Probably, maybe that was the best win of the year. I don't know. But if I watched the NC State game. Now, they won. That's all that matters. Nobody cares about how you won or anything like that. But NC State put up 500 yards on them, whooped their butt up and down the field, and still lost the game. You win by 1 point. 1. Against Louisiana Tech at Carolina. By 1 point. At home. You had to kick a field goal at the end of the last play of the game to beat them. You almost lost that game to Louisiana Tech. You lost to Texas A&M. You beat Tennessee barely, by the way. I don't remember what the score was, but it wasn't a blowout win. And Tennessee was absolutely terrible. One of the worst teams in college football this year. Tennessee was. Barely beat them. Okay, you beat Florida. Florida had the worst year they've had in 100 years. Basically, in my lifetime, that was the worst season they've ever had. So you beat them. Good job for beating a historically bad Florida team, a historically bad Tennessee team. You lost to Kentucky. Enough said. Who else did you lose to? I'm trying to. Oh well, you got your butt handed to you again by Clemson. That's the other thing. Is that it's one thing to get beat by Clemson because you've been getting beat by Clemson for 100 years. Let's be real here. Yeah, you had a little 5-game win streak against Clemson when Spurrier was there and Dabo was in his first couple years. That was your best achievement ever in the history of your football program, beating Clemson 5 times in a row. Still didn't do anything. You had a couple of 11-win seasons when Spurrier was there. Still didn't win the SEC. Still have never won the SEC. This is pre-playoff era when we still had the BCS bowl games. Never won a BCS bowl game in the BCS era. Never. I think you might have went to one. Maybe it was a Sugar Bowl or something and got blown out. But you never won an Orange Bowl. You never won a Sugar Bowl. You never won a Rose Bowl. You never won a Fiesta Bowl. Never won a Peach Bowl. Blah, blah, blah. Cotton Bowl. Nothing. Never won any of those. So you've never won the SEC. Never won a BCS bowl game. You had an ACC title back in 1969, back when in the ACC. That's it. That's what you've got. Steve Spurrier is a 10-time better football coach than Will Muschamp is. And Steve Spurrier was there for a while, could not get it done, could not win the SEC. But the delusion that you think, and not just we're going to win the East next year, rah-rah, but did you actually believe it that you're going to win the East next year? Based on what? Let's just, for a second here, try to imagine that Tennessee and Florida are still going to be terrible next year. I don't think you can get much more terrible than they were. I think they're going to have to get at least a little bit better in a rebuild year for new coaches and all that for both schools. Let's just pretend that you win both those games again next year. You beat Tennessee and Florida again. You don't have a chance, not a chance, to dethrone Georgia for the East next year. I don't think you'll even beat Georgia head-to-head, but even if you did, I don't think that you're going to win the East. Damn sure not going to win the SEC if by some miracle you win the East. It just, for me, would be refreshing because I make no bones about it, okay? Obviously, since I've been on YouTube, it's been a time when Clemson is, one of the best teams in the nation for the past few years at least, really longer than that. But for the majority of my life, they weren't. From the mid-'80s, from the time I started watching Clemson football, all the way up until into the 2000s, they were an 8-4 team, basically. That was about what they won every year, 8 games, Clemson. You didn't see me marching around, telling anybody at any time that I think that during those years that Clemson was, the best team. They were going to win the ACC every year. They were going to dethrone, win an Orange Bowl and dethrone some major powerhouse program at the time, blah, blah, blah. I loved my team. I pulled for them. I watched every game. I was optimistic. But I wasn't going around telling everybody that they were crazy because, I would like to see a Carolina fan be honest. I think that Will Muschamp is going to be a huge bust. I just do. You know what? He might be a 9-win guy. But if you have any illusions of grandeur to win the East, win the SEC on a regular basis, and compete for a playoff spot every year, and eventually a national title, Will Muschamp's not your guy. So it's all about what makes you happy. If I were a Gamecock fan, a team that had never won the SEC, had never won a national title, I'd be tired of settling for 9 wins. Okay? Listen, when I hated Tommy Bowden at Clemson, the Tommy Bowden years. I think he stayed there too long. I wanted him gone 5 years before he was actually gone. Now, I'm forever grateful to Bowden for hiring Dabo, because without Bowden, Dabo wouldn't be the head coach at Clemson. So I'm those years, those 8 and 4 years that Bowden was there was worth the wait to get what eventually happened with us getting Dabo. But I did not like Tommy Bowden. I mean, he won 8, 9, 10 games. He was a top 25 team a lot. I mean, he wasn't, they weren't a top 10 team or anything on any regular basis. Anytime that Tommy Bowden was there, he went to a bunch of bowl games. I think he went to like 8 straight bowl games or 10 straight bowl games or whatever it was. But that was it. That was the expectation for Tommy Bowden. Tommy Bowden was never going to be a powerhouse in the ACC or in the nation. No matter what. Wasn't going to happen. And that's why I wanted him gone. Not because he was a bad football coach, but he wasn't going to get Clemson to where they are now. No matter what. He was not good enough to do that. And that's Will Muschamp is the Tommy Bowden of the Gamecocks. He's going to get you 8, 9 wins. He's going to maybe keep you up in the ranked in the top 25, somewhere up around 20 or 22 or 18 on a yearly basis. You'll knock off a powerhouse team every once in a while, and then you'll lose to Kentucky or something the next week. That's Will Muschamp. That's Tommy Bowden. And that's what you've got. If you're happy with Tommy Bowden, good for you. If you want to compete for national titles, if you want to compete for Clemson, with Clemson, in the next 10 years, you got to get rid of this guy. Instead, you give him an extension before his contract's up. People. I made a video about Will Muschamp's extension, and everyone's like, well, they don't have another coach. Why wouldn't you give him an extension? I don't have a problem with re-signing him to a new contract at the end of his contract. That's not what I was saying. My problem with Will Muschamp's extension was that his contract wasn't up yet. Let his contract play out, is what I'm saying. Don't give him a 6-year extension for a ton of money, $28 million or whatever it was, for a guy who won 9 games one time. It has proven as a head coach that he's not a big winner yet. Prove it first before I give you a 6-year deal. I would make him play out his contract, coach out his contract, whatever. And then based on what he had done over the entire body of that contract, make him an offer. Either fire him at that point, let him go, or say, you know what? We see an upward trend here. We're not ready to give you a max deal yet. We're not ready to give you a 6-year deal yet. We want to see a couple more seasons. We'll give you a 2-year deal to prove that this isn't just an anomaly, that we're in a bad division. Our division's in a down cycle right now, with Tennessee and Florida being bad. So, it has nothing to do with whether or not they should keep him. But the extension thing, a premature extension, was just stupid. It's just stupid. It's going to come back to bite you. I promise you. You just gave Tommy Bowden an extension, is what you did, for 6 years. You'll be firing him in 2 or 3 years, or not. Maybe you'll, like I said, maybe the administration there and the fan base will be happy with that 9 wins every year, and they'll keep him around because they can't find anybody better. Which I have a hard time believing that, by the way. It blows my mind that South Carolina can't find a better head coach. It just does. It blows my mind. They're not. I mean, listen. As much as I hate South Carolina's football program, they have a great stadium. They have a really great fan base. They're in the SEC. They're in the fertile recruiting grounds of South Carolina, where you're surrounded by North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida for recruiting, and Virginia. I mean, you're in a prime area to attract a big-time winning football coach. And you got Will Muschamp. So, anyway, you know how I feel about this. The Gamecocks, man. Now, I love the fact that Will Muschamp's there. As long as he's there, I don't have any fear of Clemson not being the best team in the state of South Carolina. Of course, Clemson's always been the best team in the state of South Carolina. That's not going to change anytime soon. But, you know, at least give me something. You know, I wish South Carolina was a little bit better than they are. I'll admit that to you guys right now. Okay? I wish that they were better than they were. Because it just would make hating them that much better. I mean, it would make the rivalry so much better. It's not a rivalry, right? It hasn't been a rivalry for a long time. It's just been a domination. Clemson has just dominated South Carolina. And if South Carolina was a better football team, it would be more interesting to have an actual rivalry. When they line up together on the field, you really don't know who's going to win. That's what I want. I want Clemson to win, but I want the suspense to believe that South Carolina can compete with Clemson. And they just can't. And they're not going to, as long as Boom is at the helm. Anyway, give me your thoughts on this. I'm sure the South Carolina fans have a lot to say about this, like always. Anyway, Pigskin Pete checking out.